What if you've been chasing the wrong thing your entire life? What if the desire that pulls you towards screens, bodies, fantasies isn't desire at all? What if it's emptiness? Not the poetic kind. The real kind, it's a kind that sits behind your ribs at night. The kind that silence reveals when the music stops. The kind you try to fill with more pleasure, more validation, more escape. We call it lust. But lust is just the name we give to hunger when we're afraid to ask what we're truly starving for. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And maybe, just maybe, our obsession with sex, beauty, stimulation, and desire isn't about joy, or love, or even connection. Maybe it's about avoidance, avoiding the terrifying silence beneath all of it, avoiding ourselves. This is not a moral lecture. This is not about guilt, or shame, or purity. This is about a question. What if your compulsions are not about what you want, but about what you lack? You think it's lust, but it's actually emptiness. And to understand that, we must go deeper than culture, deeper than desire, deeper than sex. We must go down into the psyche, into the caverns where the soul waits, buried beneath the noise. This is not a journey of answers. This is a descent, and, if you're willing, we begin now. Lust is everywhere. It stares at you from the glow of your phone, drips from advertisements, and slips between the lines of every trending video. Every curated image, every clickbait headline, it's painted as freedom, marketed as empowerment, packaged as identity. But what if that's not what it really is? What if lust, in the modern world, isn't a fire from within, but a mirage cast over a desert of meaning? We are told we want beauty, told we crave attention, told that sex is liberation, that pleasure is power. But let's pause. Who taught us what to want? Was it instinct, or was it design? After World War II, advertising surged. Corporations began selling not products, but fantasies. Desire was no longer just biological. It became economic. You weren't just buying shampoo. You were buying attraction. You were buying desire itself, and the sexual revolution. Yes, it broke down walls of repression, but it also opened new markets. Suddenly, the body was a brand, desire a currency, and now we live in a world where seduction is algorithmic. Every swipe, every scroll is curated, not for joy, not even for lust, but for engagement. Because your craving is profitable, your attention is valuable, and the more disconnected you are from your inner world, the more likely you are to chase something, anything outside of it. That's the mirage, the illusion of wanting. The trick of the desert. You think you're running toward water, but you're only deepening the thirst. This isn't to say desire is evil. Desire is human. Desire is sacred. But manipulated desire, that's not lust. That's hunger in disguise. That's emptiness whispering, "Feed me, distract me, numb me. Just don't leave me alone with myself." The tragedy is not that we lust. The tragedy is that we don't even know why. We mistake arousal for connection, clicks for intimacy, validation for love, and all the while, something deeper goes untouched. Because this was never about sex. This was about the self. And what happens? When the self is hollowed out and sold back to you in pieces. Carl Jung didn't see lust the way most people do. To Jung, lust wasn't simply a biological impulse. It wasn't just about sex or attraction or even pleasure. It was energy, psychic. Energy, he called it libido, but not in the Freudian sense of raw sexual drive. For Jung, libido was the fuel of the psyche, and lust was only one place it could go. It could become art or obsession, prayer or addiction, or compulsion. It all depended on how well we understood the engine beneath. Our desire, but most of us never do. We're not taught to listen to the soul. We're taught to consume, to react, to escape. And so our libido, this deep creative force, is hijacked. It's rerouted into compulsions, loops, fixations. We obsess over images. We pursue fantasies. We crave what we cannot touch and discard what we can. Why? Because we are not seeing reality. We are seeing the shadow in Jung's framework. The shadow is everything we reject about ourselves. Our shame, our rage, our loneliness, our fear, our vulnerability. We bury it deep in the unconscious and pretend it doesn't exist. But the shadow doesn't die. It waits, and when you meet someone who drives you crazy, when you feel intense lust, obsession, projection, you are not meeting them. You are meeting your shadow, dressed in someone else's skin. Desire then becomes a mirror, not of the other person, but of your own fragmentation. You don't want them. You want the part of yourself you abandoned and see reflected in them. That's why lust feels irrational. Why it can't be reasoned with. Why it leads to affairs, addictions, betrayals. It's not about sex, it's about reunion. Reunion with the parts of the psyche we lost or were forced to bury. The seductive woman, the dangerous man, the unattainable lover. These are not just characters. They are archetypes. Jung called them the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine forces within every human being. When undeveloped, they appear as obsession. When integrated, they become wisdom. You see, we don't just lust for others. We lust for the missing parts of ourselves. But instead of going inward, we chase them out there, in strangers, in screens, in stimulation. It never satisfies. Because it never goes deep enough, and that's the trap. We treat our emptiness like an itch, and lust becomes the scratching. But the more we scratch, the deeper the wound gets. Jung believed that the only true cure was individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a whole person, not by chasing desire, but by confronting the shadow, by facing the parts of ourselves we fear, by making the unconscious conscious. Only then can lust be transformed, not suppressed, but transmuted, turned into art, intimacy, understanding, love, but love real. Love requires something our modern world despises: stillness, depth, integration, and above all, self-awareness. Lust screams, but the soul whispers. And if you can't hear that whisper, you'll keep mistaking emptiness for desire. If you wanted to control a society, where would you begin? You could build armies, you could pass laws, you could suppress speech. But there's a much quieter way, more efficient, more elegant. You make people empty, not completely. Just enough to keep them chasing, enough to keep them consuming, enough to make them feel like something is always missing, but never quite know what it is. Welcome to the modern world, where emptiness is not just a byproduct. It's a design. Jung warned us about this a century ago. He said modern man is a crowd of people, lonely together. And that loneliness, it wasn't accidental. It was profitable because an empty person is predictable. An empty person buys more, scrolls more, needs more. They don't create. They consume. They don't think. They react. And that's exactly what the system needs: a market of half people, broken enough to obey, but functional enough to work. Look around. Every app you open, every product you're sold, every song you hear whispers the same message: you are not enough. But you could be if you had this. This is not capitalism in its classical form. This is psychological capitalism, a system that feeds on your inner void. But where did that void come from? Once we had mythology, ritual, community, symbols that helped us navigate the inner world. Now we have content. Endless, infinite content. Replacing the sacred with the sensational. Replacing inner truth with outer noise. The philosopher Jean Baudrillard called this the age of simulacra, where we no longer experience reality, only simulations of it. We don't seek love. We seek the image of love. We don't seek meaning. We seek the performance of meaning. We don't even seek sex anymore. We seek sex's digital shadow, flawless, curated. Detached, we've built a culture of artificial intimacy, hyper-connected but spiritually severed. And so we drift through timelines, through trends, through avatars, hungry but numb every time you feel that ache, that restless scrolling, that subtle dissatisfaction. You are not malfunctioning. You are responding exactly as the system trained. You too, because emptiness isn't a glitch, it's the product. The truth is this: lust thrives in a vacuum. Not because lust is evil, but because it's easy. Easier than confronting the vastness inside you. Easier than solitude, than silence. Than looking in the mirror and asking, "Who am I?" when no one's watching. But here's the cruel irony. This culture teaches you to chase pleasure, but punishes you when it doesn't fulfill you. It teaches you to glorify sex, but shames you when it consumes you. It calls you free, but binds you with algorithms designed to know your every weakness. And at the root of it all, it's a hollow center, a core that was never given the chance to form. Because from the moment we're born, we're handed distractions, screens instead of stories, desire instead of direction, fame instead of purpose. We become experts in everything except ourselves, so the emptiness grows. Not because we are broken, but because we are starved. Starved of meaning, starved of silence, starved of the psychological nourishment that can't be bought. And that's the real conspiracy. Not that we're being manipulated, but that we've forgotten there's anything real to return to. We talk about addiction like it's about substances, cigarettes, alcohol, drugs, porn. But these are just the symptoms, not the cause. The real addiction is to avoidance, avoiding pain, avoiding silence, avoiding that cold, gnawing space inside. You that asks questions no algorithm can answer. We're not addicted to dopamine. We're addicted to distraction. Distraction from the void, the aching sense that something is missing. But you don't know what. Carl Jung believed that neurosis, our compulsions, anxieties, disorders arise when the soul is starved of meaning. So we improvise. We take that psychic hunger and we try to feed it with what's available. Clicks, likes, bodies, validation, stimulation. But none of it nourishes us. It only numbs us. It works for a while, till it doesn't. And when it stops working, we don't change the strategy, we intensify it. More porn, more shopping, more scrolling, more dot, because in a world where depth has been replaced by volume, we mistake excess for satisfaction. But you cannot fill a soul with pixels. You cannot solve existential hunger with chemical pleasure. And so the cycle repeats, not because we're hedonist, but because we're starving for something we've forgotten how to name. Something ancient, something sacred, something real. Every addict is looking for God, but they settle for whatever is easiest to reach, and lust is always easy to reach. It's the low-hanging fruit of transcendence, a glimpse of union, a flicker of intensity, a moment of disappearance when the self, the pain, the fear all melt away, until it comes back, stronger, heavier, hungrier. But here's the twist. We don't just fear the emptiness. We identify with it. We mistake the hollow feeling for who we are. We build an identity around lack. I'm just broken. I'm just this way. I need this to feel okay. So we cling to the very thing that's hurting us, because at least it's familiar. That's the deepest addiction of all. The belief that without your cravings, your distractions, your lusts, you are nothing. But what if the emptiness is not your enemy? What if it's your invitation? Because emptiness is also space. It is potential. It is the womb of transformation. Every great awakening begins in the dark. Every rebirth starts with a death, and maybe the death you're afraid of is not physical. It's the death of who you were before you met the part of yourself that doesn't run, the part that sits with the emptiness, the part that listens, the part that waits, because beneath the addiction, beneath the craving, beneath the hunger, is a question. What would happen if I stopped running? And that's not a question your ego wants to answer, because once you stop, once you sit in the silence, once you feel it fully, you might realize something terrifying. The emptiness was never trying to destroy you. It was trying to wake you up. Lust is not the enemy. It was never the enemy. It's a signal, a compass, a flame trying to guide you home, but distorted through the smoke of culture, trauma, and distraction. You don't need to destroy it. You need to understand it, because buried inside lust is longing, and buried inside longing is the path to wholeness. This is where Carl Jung's work takes us deeper than simple psychology. Jung didn't want to fix people. He wanted to help them become whole, and that journey, the one from fragmentation to integration, is not clean. It's not fast, and it's not comfortable. It's a descent into the parts of yourself you were taught to hide, into the forgotten corners of your psyche, into the raw, the shameful, the misunderstood. This is the journey of individuation, the process of reclaiming what you've lost, piece by piece. Yes, it begins with emptiness. With that terrible quiet, when the noise finally stops. But the silence is not empty. It's full of things you've never faced, your wounds, your unmet needs, your rage, your tenderness. You meet them not as an analyst, but as a witness, and slowly something changes. Lust stops being a reflex. It starts becoming a message, a sign of energy misplaced, a clue about your shadow, a longing for a connection you haven't yet built, not with others, but with yourself. You stop chasing, and you start listening, and the more you listen, the more you begin to hear the deeper call, not to consume, but to create, not to seduce, but to connect, not to escape the self, but to come home to it. You realize that what you were seeking in others was never really about them. It was your soul mirrored. It was your feminine, your masculine, your unloved inner child, all dressed in the clothes of another person's body. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Most people never make it this far. They circled the same compulsions for years, mistaking repetition for destiny. But those who are brave enough to face the void begin to see something else. They realize that wholeness isn't perfection. It's integration. It's the marriage of opposites, light and dark, sacred and sexual, wild and wise. They stop splitting off parts of themselves. They stop trying to be pure, and they start trying to be true. Whole. This is not a religious idea. It's not even a spiritual one. It's human, because the deepest truth is this: you were never broken. You were only incomplete. And the journey was never about fixing yourself. It was about finding yourself in the pieces you were taught to abandon. So the next time lust rises, don't run, don't numb, and don't shame it. Ask it, what are you really trying to show me? Because if you're willing to go beneath the surface, beneath the images, the urges, the craving, you'll find something ancient, something quiet, something whole, and you'll realize you thought it was lust, but it was always emptiness, and now it's becoming truth. Modern lust is not just a personal struggle. It's a global business model, and the currency is your attention, your longing, your disconnection in a world of algorithms, dopamine loops, and digital simulation. Lust isn't a glitch, it's a feature. Because in a culture engineered for maximum stimulation and minimum meaning, your desire becomes a product. Your fantasy becomes a market. Your soul becomes a data point. From porn sites to dating apps, influencer thirst traps to synthetic AI girlfriends, we're surrounded by systems designed to evoke lust, but never fulfill it. Why? Because fulfillment doesn't sell. Discontent. DOESA satisfied person doesn't scroll endlessly. A whole person doesn't chase shadows. An integrated mind isn't easy to manipulate, so we are taught to confuse intensity with intimacy, performance with connection, consumption with love. The result? We're living in the most connected era in history, but experiencing the most profound disconnection humanity has ever known. Not just from each other, but from ourselves, from the sacredness of touch, from the meaning of union, from the inner architecture of desire itself. And when lust is severed from meaning, it becomes a loop, a hollow cycle of chasing highs and crashing into lows. Swipe, crave, regret, repeat, a system that feeds on loneliness and then sells you a fantasy of closeness. But behind every screen, every algorithm, every viral trend is one unspoken truth. No one profits from your wholeness. There is no business model for inner peace. There is no viral trend for silence. No billion-dollar company selling you self-awareness, but disconnection. That's lucrative. Make people forget how to love. Make them ashamed of their desires. Make them fear intimacy, but crave stimulation. Now you've got customers for life. Lust in this system is not liberation. It's containment. It gives the illusion of freedom while keeping you trapped in the lowest frequencies of being. And the cost, more than money, it's our relationships. Our capacity to connect. Our very understanding of what it means to be human. Because when desire is shaped by algorithms and attraction is filtered through screens, we begin to see each other not as souls, but as content. And the body, once a sacred vessel of intimacy, becomes a commodity, something to market, something to manipulate, something to use. We didn't arrive here by accident. This was a slow erosion, a death by 1,000 distractions. And now we face a choice. Do we keep feeding the machine, numbing the ache with more, or do we finally pause and ask the question we've been trained to avoid? What is all this lust really hiding? Because once you see it for what it is, once you understand the system, you can begin to dismantle it. Not with rage, not with shame, but with clarity. And from that clarity comes power. So what do we do with all this hunger, the lust, the ache, the longing that never seems to be satisfied? Do we kill it, suppress it, deny it? Carl Jung would say no, because beneath every obsession is a soul trying to speak. The lust isn't evil. The hunger isn't wrong. It's just been misdirected, pointed outward when it was always meant to take you inward. This is the paradox of desire. We think it wants something external, but what it truly seeks is wholeness. The body longs for union. The psyche longs for meaning. And the soul longs for itself. But in a world of noise, we forget how to listen. In a culture of consumption, we forget how to receive. In a system that profits from our confusion, we forget that we are not broken, just disconnected. Disconnected from the inner wellspring that doesn't need validation. Disconnected from the sacred center that remembers who we are. Disconnected from the quiet truth we buried long ago. That we were always enough. You see, lust is not the fire you must put out. It's the fire you must understand, because when you face it, not with shame, but with courage, it transforms. It becomes creativity, it becomes compassion. It becomes a deeper kind of love, not one that consumes, but one that illuminates. And that's the final truth. You thought it was lust, but it was actually emptiness. And you thought emptiness meant something was missing, but it didn't. It meant something was waiting, waiting for you to stop running, to stop numbing, to stop chasing shadows, and finally, to listen. Because beneath the hunger, beneath the noise, beneath the ache, is not your shame, not your weakness, but your light. And it's been calling you home this whole time.